Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Yvonne Priest Show. I am Yvonne Priest, your little ray of darkness. I am about to do something I've wanted to do since I was a child. I get the opportunity to not only speak to someone I've admired, but someone who worked with so many people I've admired growing up, pretty much the gateway into my horror obsession. We were talking to Eddie Munster himself, Butch Patrick. Butch, it's so great to have you on the show.
I thank you so much, Yvonne Priest. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here.
Well, hopefully you like the name choice, the namesake of being your former castmates.
Yeah, well, you got Pat Priest, you got the last name of Pat Priest, you got the first name of Yvonne DiCarlo. That's a nice hybrid.
I've admired Yvonne for the longest time, so there was something also very pretty about the way it was said, but also the way it was written. So I was like, if when I do this podcast, it has to be Yvonne. I was like, well, could I have Owen? It would be great, but it didn't suit it. But having Pat's name, I think it just kind of capped it off perfectly.
Very nice, very nice. And they were both, were Yvonne was, Pat still is, wonderful women. I was very lucky to work with them both, as well as Fred and Al. We had a wonderful cast.
You did, but I don't know if many people know. So they really should know this. But you weren't the original Eddie that was picked. We had Happy Derman that was the original Eddie.
And before Happy Derman, they actually approached Bill Mooney, and they were Bill Mooney. Bill Mooney was their first choice, and they never even got to script to him because he wasn't interested. For whatever reason, he was busy doing other things. And then Happy Derman was the result of the casting call when they went out looking, and they went through several hundred kids and wound up with Happy. I wasn't living, even though I had been working in Hollywood. I moved to Illinois with my grandmother during the early part of that year, and then they found out that Happy Derman wasn't going to be working. The networks wanted to change the mother and the kid because there was a woman named Joan Marshall who had done the pilot. As her character name was Phoebe, as a lot of people may have never seen it. So it was a very interesting little color. Even though the show was done in black and white, the pilot was done in color. And the networks agreed to do the show, but they didn't want to change out the two actors that played mom and the son. And Mary Grady, my agent, caught wind of that and told them that she had the perfect kid. And they basically said, we've looked at every kid in Hollywood. And she said, well, he's not in Hollywood right now. He's in Illinois with his grandmother. So they flew me out for a screen test with Yvonne DiCarlo, and they hired me on the spot.
That's incredible. That is really, really lucky for you as well. And you would, because I have seen the original pilot too. So I've
Mm.
seen how it was and just how completely different Happy's portrayal was of yours as well. You were very much the kid next door.
And a lot of people are kind of hard on him over that. I don't really believe it was his. The director is telling him what to do, so
Mm.
he's interpreting the director. But one of the things about my career, I was very lucky that I really about 80-90% of the time, my reading of the characters when I would do any kind of show was what they were looking for. My instincts were pretty good. And the key difference is what you need to do is, if it's not the way, when you go up for a reading and when you present your lines and your performance, the trick is, are you able to change it for what they want? But I was lucky that 80% of the time what I was doing was pretty close to what they were looking for. So I got to play myself, and the Eddie character was a perfect example of it. I just really was just playing Butch with a little bit of makeup on.
Well, yes, you definitely can defend Happy with his portrayal because he actually had the wolf makeup as well. So he was just kind of feeding into that as well as being told what he was doing for the situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing about that screen test was two things. Number one, it was great for me because it got me to go, it got me the job. But Yvonne DiCarlo was such a strong person such a major movie star at the time that was doing television was unheard of. It was like that was like second class work for a movie star. But she came in to do it out of necessity because her husband was a stuntman who had been terribly hurt in a stunt gone wrong in a movie called How the West Was Won. And the Stuntman's Association insurance didn't cover his medical bills. So they really depleted their family nest egg with his medical bill. And she went to work in the Munsters literally for the paycheck. But she was great at it. I mean, she was like, in my opinion, she was the secret weapon that nobody saw coming, a major name of a movie star, but she did comedy and she held the family unit together as moms did back then. You had your Donna Reeds and you had this and that, but she literally was just a wonderful actress who was perfect for the part.
But it was also because that she was doing movies that Fred and Al actually thought she wasn't going to be suitable. They approached the producers about selecting her, didn't they?
Right, and they were the first to admit that they were wrong afterwards. They definitely thought it was a bad idea, and as it turned out to, in my opinion, they were a solid team. But she balanced it out perfectly, and that's one of the reasons why the show was so successful. Is even though we were all in makeup and we were all living in this crazy wacky house, we were never looked upon as threatening monsters. We were just looked upon as a very functional family, believe it or not.
Yeah, you guys were just the family next door, just you looked monstrous, which
Right.
is the perfect contrast to it.
Yeah, it was funny when you think back to the '60s in America, and for that matter, maybe the whole world. But there was a lot of interaction of social upheaval, and there was segregation, and there was color, black and white, this and that, and people didn't want to live next door to each other. And when you look at that softly, the Munsters softly addressed that because there were episodes where the next door neighbors were putting up fences and trying to stay away from them, and they were scared of the Munsters. But inside the household, they were very much, it was like don't judge a book by its cover. And Marilyn loved her family, even though they were weird looking, and we thought she was the unfortunate one. And the twist on the whole thing of what you look like didn't matter was played to perfection.
Exactly. It really was. But also you being done in makeup as well, because you all had to endure that very heavy grease paint every single day. What was the process of getting into that every time?
The grease paint only lasted a few weeks, and what happened was it wasn't working. It would basically cake up and crack, and we were having real trouble getting through the day working because the makeup department and the makeup artists were constantly touching us up. So what happened was Max Factor, who became a major makeup supplier, developed a pan stick that was very pliable and went on very easy and didn't crack. So the first few weeks, you'll see the makeup very shiny and grease looking and paint like. And then after that, about maybe four shows into it, you'll see a definite change in the texture and the look. And after that, it was still, you had to do your makeup in the morning, but during the day and the touch ups were pretty easy. And we were only in makeup 3 days a week, so it wasn't too bad.
So what was production like for you being the youngest one of the crew? I can imagine because you ended up doing 39 episodes in the first season.
Yeah.
And production was ended up being quite slow. So what was it like for you to go through that to such a young age?
Well, it was the main thing that for a kid is you always have 3 hours of school. So even if you would have some free time in between shots, they put you in school. Where adults, you have a coffee break, a cigarette break, you can go outside, visit a friend. But the kids are pretty much always you're either on the set or you're in school. And they do give you an hour of recreation, which is where I used to go explore stuff around the studio. But the episodes, wherever you see Eddie as a main character, like an episode built around Eddie's character, that will be one that was shot in the summer because that gave them an extra 3 hours of camera time.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
because normally there would be, you're on the set, you get there for makeup at 8 o'clock, so you're on the set at 9. Let's just say you go to school 3 hours. Let's say you go straight through 3 hours to noon. And then you got maybe an hour to work, and that's one. You go to lunch till 2. You come back. You have your hour of free time to 3, and then 2 hours left. So you really only get like 2 hours a day to be on camera. In the normal day. But in the summer, you get 5, and
Yeah.
5. That's when they load you up with some episodes.
I can just imagine just how Fred had to deal with that suit. Apparently he was losing weight with how much he was sweating in the suit he had to wear.
He was a very thin, tall guy, and that suit was very, very heavy, very heavy, very warm. And in the lights back in the day, they weren't like today's lights that are, you don't really gain a whole lot of temperature when you walk into the set with today's lights. The technologies there, the old lights were very hot. They were like really like spotlights. You get close to them, they would burn you. So when they would all be focused on the set at one time, you'd walk in from the shadows and it would get like 30 degrees hotter under the lights. It was like really, really noticeable. And that took its toll because he's wearing a big padded suit as well, and he's always on camera. So it did. He drank a lot of water, a lot of lemonade, took a lot of salt pills. But even with only 3 days a week filming, it still took its toll over the course of 2 years.
Oh, it would have. And also with Yvonne, she was wearing something like a 10 or 20-pound wig or something, wasn't
Her
she as
wig was
well?
yeah, her wig was very heavy, and her gown and her lily dress. It was, it was trying for everybody, even for that matter. Al, he was dressed in layers and capes and long sleeves and leather on, leather gloves on his hands, and it was definitely the saving grace was it was only 3 days of shooting, and it gave us 4 days off.
Well, that's good. But also with having also Beverly, she ended up wearing a wig for her scenes as well. But also when it was time for Beverly to go, because I heard that she wasn't very happy with it. Her boyfriend was on the other side of the country.
Yeah,
Is it true that basically in order to break her contract, it was like a stalemate of you let her break her contract or the show's not going to continue?
that is how I understand it. That it went down. I believe that Al Lewis was the physical. Al was a big guy. He was about 6'3" himself, even though Fred was 6'7". But Al was a stout guy. He was Fred was like a string bean, but Al was a very streetwise, tough guy, and I believe he was the one that literally grabbed one of the producers and shook him until they came to their senses.
I love just how much these two went to bat for all of you. Like it was great. Like they went to bat originally to not have Yvonne to realize that they were wrong, but to actually go and bat for Beverly. At one point, going to bat for Pat as well. These sound like great men that you got to work with every day or for 3 days.
Yeah, they were a team, and they were New Yorkers that were transplanted out in Los Angeles. Fred and Al both had a lot of contempt for the producers. They were performers, and they didn't trust the producers, and they understood everybody's role, but they very much felt that the producers had too much, made too much money, held too much power, and didn't appreciate the acting community. It was just a rivalry of sorts, and that may be true. I was just a kid, I was pretty much sheltered from most of everything. If anything that went down, it would be after I was let go to go home, or where I would be at lunch. So for my existence, I had a pretty idyllic, just little 2 year run that I never saw any of the stress issues.
Oh, well, at least that was good for you at
That's good.
being so young. Yeah. But also when it comes to apart from doing all the production stuff, pretty much it seems like that when you guys weren't filming those episodes, you were pretty much out promoting in full makeup, weren't you?
No, occasionally there would be something. Fred did a few things in makeup. I think that one time I went to a mall, an opening of a mall in Phoenix with a man in a gorilla suit named Bob Burns, and it was called Kogar as Eddie's pet, and I put the makeup on myself on the plane on the flight over. We had about an hour flight from LA to Phoenix, and I did my own makeup, and we did a big shopping mall, and it was amazing because we had like 5,000 kids there, and there's some pictures of me like looking like what the heck's going on, and me with there's a police guard, there's a policeman for security, and then there's a microphone guy, and then there's Bob Burns next to me, but not too often. Back in the day, we didn't really do a lot of that. I didn't do a lot of like talk shows or nighttime game shows or anything like that. It was pretty much just you did your job, and that was about it.
So I also heard that when it came to that pretty much rivalry that was between you and the Addams family, because your production was so slow, ABC essentially sped up production for the Addams family to beat your premiere date. They premiered a week before or the week of the Munsters as well.
Yeah, we were the 24th on a Thursday, and they came out the Friday before, which would have probably been the 18th.
Yeah, did sound like they're like, these guys are onto something. Let's kind of beat them to the punch. And you must have dealt with that comparison between the two shows for the entire time of the run.
It actually worked out really, really well because people, whether you preferred one or the other, you probably had a favorite, but the chances are you watched them both. Had we been head to head right against each other, it would have been bad because you would have had to pick one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
But because the Addams family actually had an ongoing comic strip from the New Yorker and had already had kind of a following, the Munsters had originally been a brainchild of an animator named Bob Clampett, who came up with an idea of an animated Munsters movie, TV characters in the early 50s that they just never acted upon. But when they decided that Joe Connolly and Bob Mosier, who done Leave It to Beaver, were looking for a vehicle, they resurrected that idea. But instead of making it animated, they made it a live show with actors. And that's how that started out. But literally, I think we each helped each other's existence.
Mm-hmm. Also, for anyone playing at home and watching this, the Munsters house gets seen quite a lot or often in the back of actually Leave It to Beaver because you filmed on the same backlot.
I'm sorry, what was that?
That the Leave It that your house was actually featured in the back of Leave It to Beaver's.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. One of the houses on the fictional Colonial Street, where there was about 12 houses to give a simulated residential area look, depending on what side of the street you're on.
I did go on the Universal tour, and I remember being on what is now Wisteria Lane, and they said, "Oh yes, the Munsters house was here," and I was just crushed. I was like, "You turned it into
Yeah, I know.
Wisteria Lane."
They have a lot of room out there. You think that they would have made room to actually have the real Munster house on its own freestanding spot.
Mm-hmm. Because you best believe I would have jumped off the cart to go get a photo with myself in front of that house.
Yeah, I know. It looks like a Sherwin-Williams commercial. You would never know it's the Munster house unless they pointed it out.
But also, when it came to doing the second year of the show, people were noticing that there was a bit of like a decline in almost kind of like the quality of the writing. And this was something that also Al and Fred were kind of going to producers about as well. Did you notice
Yep.
that as well as you were reading the scripts?
Two things I noticed. First thing I noticed was when Beverly Owen left the show, the dynamic of the show changed radically because the first 13 episodes, the storyline was always about Marilyn seeking love and losing love when she brought her beaux home to the front door and they would run away. That was an ongoing theme of how are we going to get her married off, and the interaction with her bringing normal people to the front door and them having a moment and interacting with the Munsters. That was how that worked. When she left the show, Pat Priest stepped in, but there was a definite shift to where the storylines was much more about the boys in the dungeon getting into mischief, or Herman at work, or Grandpa, or Eddie at school. And unfortunately, the character of Marilyn took quite a hit, becoming a background, or not maybe a background, but an equal figure, as opposed to the beautiful blonde with the family set aside and she was the star, because the original storylines were much more about Marilyn. I mean, it was obvious to me. But in the second season, yeah, there was only so many jokes and so many storylines that they felt. I think they would have continued had the ratings stayed good, but Batman, there was another thing going on. There was a transitional mode going on between black and white and color television and programming right at that 2-year window of the Munsters. So you had a lot of people battling about who was going to pay for color, which shows were going to make it, which shows weren't, this and that. There was a big shift in production and how it was going to be perceived. Would westerns do well? Would sci-fi do well? Would cop shows? A lot going on. But Batman being a huge hit in color caused the Munsters to make a decision to either go to color, but Fred and Al felt that the scripts didn't warrant that, and they were, I think they were homesick. I think they were ready to go back to New York. They had been transplanted in California for nearly 2 years. And I think the idea of just doing a color movie to introduce the world to the Munsters for syndication down the road was a good business move. Everybody was happy. We didn't have to grind out another year and try to, have crappy ratings and be like a second class show. This way we went out reasonably on top with the movie and everybody was happy.
Well, you say that, but the producers then approached Pat Priest and said that she wasn't going to be joining you for Munster Go Home.
No, and that was another business move because it wasn't necessarily Pat, although she was 27 years old. And the character of Marilyn was a high school, college, 17, 18-year-old person. But the reason they picked Debbie Watson is she was under contract to Universal, and they had a series called Karen that starred her. And they wanted to introduce her and get as much exposure for their new star. She'd also done a Tammy and a Gidget, I believe, or a Tammy and the Professor. But anyway, the deal is they wanted to get as much exposure for Debbie Watson at that time. That's why they left her a redhead.
Yeah.
They didn't even put a blonde wig on her.
But when it came to Pat leaving, were you actually there that day she was produced, or was she like approached privately about not joining the movie?
No, I didn't. I'm sure that they let her know. But I mean, Hollywood's not really too good about being gentle or tactful. There a lot of times people get fired by hearing about it on the news. Um, but I believe that they told her that she wouldn't be doing the part of Marilyn, and it crushed her. She was very hurt, and but she I think honestly, it wasn't personal.
Yeah,
It really wasn't. There was I mean, had there not been a TV show that they were trying to promote and they just brought in Debbie Watson for no reason other than just to remove Pat, that would have been different. But there really was a business, and it is show business.
yeah,
So there was a reason, there was a rationale there was a strategic business thing in place. And in my opinion, that would have been enough for me to say, well, I don't like it, but I understand it.
yeah.
I wouldn't have taken it personally.
But the boys did go to bat for her on that as well. As well, I heard that both Ed and Ed
Yeah,
were there trying to protect her.
yeah. That one probably, I'm sure. I mean, obviously they lost out on that one because of the nature of it. But I do understand why that happened.
Yeah. But also when it comes to the Adams, not Adams, well, sorry, we're talking about the Munsters, not the Adams family. When it comes to the Munsters, there have been plenty of times where they've tried to do a reboot or a remake. Do you feel sometimes that these remakes and reboots are warranted, or do you feel sometimes they should just kind of leave it alone because they can't recapture the charm of the original?
Well, they'll never leave anything in Hollywood alone. It's they just regurgitate stuff. Imitation is the highest form of flattery. So you look at it that way. There's been five remakes, one series, five movies, an animated series. The last one, I was involved with two of them. I was involved with Here Come the Munsters, I think it was the Munsters. Yeah, Here Come the Munsters with the Edward Herman, and where we all did a cameo in the restaurant, which was a lot of fun. I thought that was a nice touch. And then I did a voiceover for Rob Zombie's Munsters recently, and then I was in Munster Home. So actually, I was involved in three of them. But whenever the Munsters is a tried and true franchise. Universal is very protective of it. They've had several remakes, some of them not so good. I mean, I thought Mockingbird Lane honestly wasn't bad. I thought it was interesting the way they went about it, and I was there the last day of the shoot and got to meet the cast, and they had the A-list, director and A-list writers and A-list stars for that matter, and spent a lot of money on that pilot. I was very surprised that it didn't get made into at least 10 episodes, of which I already had a part in it. So that would have been nice. I would have looked at it as a nice reoccurring role. You have to excuse me with the water. I have a sore throat. But but as far as the remakes, yeah, they've done a lot. It's a good solid name. Merchandise is still very popular, and people enjoy it. So until they actually make one that absolutely bombs, they'll probably make another one.
True. But I don't know, maybe because I'm just a bit kind of precious with this one. Like they've remade the Addams Family and I've enjoyed what they've done, especially with the new cast that they currently have. But with the Munsters, and even Pat said this herself, that you can't replace all of you, that all of you are a part of the charm of the original. So it wasn't just more the time, it was what you did with the characters.
Yeah, it's like I say, they just remake stuff in Hollywood. It's just what they do. I mean, they're just lazy or they ran out of ideas or whatever. But the interesting thing I'll give you an example for the Rob Zombie movie is people come to the table and ask my opinion of it. And I go, I'm okay with it because two things. Number one, it was made as a labor of love for Rob Zombie. He's an actual huge fan, and he went to a lot of trouble and a lot of work to do that for his personal fanboy. And yes, he uses his wife, and she was great. And so I'm drawing a blank. Sherry Moon. And I thought she was wonderful. But what I liked about that movie was it showed us a story of how Herman and Lily met that had never been addressed, which was fun. Now, did I expect it to be as good as the Munsters? No. I've never really been a Rob Zombie movie fan. I like his music. I've seen his music in his concerts many times. I've never watched one of his movies. But people come up and say, "Oh, it's not like his movie, and it's not like the Munsters." I go, "Well, it's not supposed to be. You're you're predetermining what you expect it to be. It's like neither of them. It's a Munsters tribute movie. It's telling a storyline about a love story, and it's not like his movies. And Rob Zombie, I knew he could do a good job because before the movie was made, I knew that he had been set designer on Pee Wee's Playhouse of all things.
Oh, okay. That one I didn't know. Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
so I mean, the guy has range, and he chooses to do his music and his movies, but he's not one dimensional. So when I first went in to do my voiceover, when I saw what I was doing, I saw the texture and the colors. I looked at it. Oh my God, it's like a Tim Burton movie. That's what the first thing out of my mind. And I go, well, that's good. Tim
Yep.
Burton's great. And now we've got there's a director of the Insidious and the Saw movies. And I think it's Andrew Wan. Andrew Wan.
James
I can't
Wan.
remember. Is that was this James Wan?
Yep.
Okay, James Wan, and he's doing the Munsters. A thing with an email from somebody that said, "Have you seen this?" And he's doing a Munsters remake, but they only used the picture of Eddie when they came out with it. And I said, "I
Oh,
want." So what I'm thinking about what he may be doing is seeing the success Tim Burton had with the Addams Family and Wednesday. Maybe they're going to do a Munsters, but you finally give Eddie put Eddie in the foreground and make it about Eddie because of the nature of the Wednesday property.
I like that. I like that, but I also like the fact he's a Melbourne boy as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna
Yeah. So
support. I'm gonna support buddies.
it was just funny the way when it was presented that they used a picture of Eddie as opposed to a picture of the Munsters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So I sent him an email. I said, "Congratulations on your new Munsters. Please make Eddie dark and interesting."
Yes, actually. Okay, now I'm kind of excited for this. I'm glad you told me this. I'm really happy to hear this one.
Now you have to do some research.
I do.
Yeah.
So you spent so much time on the set with Fred and Al and Yvonne. You spent probably, close to the same amount of time you would have spent in waking hours with your own family. What were favorite moments that you had with each of the cast members?
Well, Fred was really, really busy. So most of the time, that what I got the most out of with Fred Gwynn was actually on camera scenes with our father and son scripts, with him teaching me, acting techniques, and I was pretty good at what I did. I didn't forget my lines. I wasn't a liability. So one of the things that early on when they found out that he and I had a good father and son relationship, and we could get through scenes together without causing a lot of time to be wasted, they started writing father and son scripts, and he taught me a lot about acting. So that was great. That was wonderful. On the other hand, Al Lewis, when Fred was working and Al had free time and I had free time, Al was a big sports fan. My stepdad was a pro baseball player back in the day, and Al liked the fact that I enjoyed sports, so he would toss a frisbee with me or toss a football or a baseball, and be like a grandfather. It's funny. My family had moved back east, and I was living with my uncle, so I really did spend more time with my family, my TV family, than I did with my real family for 2 years, and that was fun. And they all had kids about my age. They liked me, I liked them. Like I say, I wasn't a liability to the show, and I did my job well. And that always, that makes it easier for adults to be tolerant of kids. But Pat Priest always was very kind about talking that I was a good kid and everybody loved me and we got along great. And it could have been awkward because you're the only kid at Universal Studios, and the only time I would have company would be if another kid was guest starring on the show. And I had hired a woman to take me to work, and I was living with my uncle. So it could have been a weird experience, but it wasn't. It worked out okay.
That's good. Is there anything that your cast members have told you when you were a child that you still kind of carry with you this day about life or acting or whatnot?
Fred and Al, the main thing they told me was never trust the suits. They were, like I said, they were very much not fans of the front office producers. They were talent, they were actors, and they were well seasoned, and they didn't trust the suits because a lot of actors got really screwed in Hollywood, by creative accounting and people that didn't play fair, and not your union doesn't always protect you. Sometimes you got to protect yourself. And Al and Fred were very skeptical and very very wary of the Hollywood. They, like you said, they call them the suits.
I've got to ask, just because I'm named after her, what was your favorite moment that you had with Yvonne on set?
With Yvonne, um, oh, just mainly just when when we would do, she'd be like maybe the episode of Zombo when we she takes me to the studio and she protects me from the producer after I terrorize the set and call Zombo a fake and she don't you dare touch my boy. So she was a protective mom. It seems like that were always fun.
That's great. Well, also, you actually have, I believe, the coach and the Dragula. You own them, or you have replicas?
I have my own version.
Versions.
My car club has the original Dragula, the number 3 coach, my club brother. I have a accurate Dragula, except it's an automatic and has 200 more horse. And I have having my coach rebuilt because the ones that I did own were built by a guy that was a Chevy guy, and I wanted mine to be accurate because George Barris only put small block Fords in his cars. So both my Dragula now is a small block Ford, and my coach will be as well.
These make it out to conventions as well, don't they?
Yeah, yeah, and I also have an Eddie Harley Davidson chopper that I designed as an adult for another person, and I wound up buying it back a few years ago. So now I got the Dragon and the bike and the trailer, and then the coach will be done. And I'll either bring the coach along or I'll bring the Dragon and the bike along. But I'm not bringing them all at the same time because it's too big of a trailer. I used to do that. Like it was brutal driving a 34-foot trailer around.
Do you let people like have a ride in them if you know
I did
people?
in the old ones. The old ones I did. Dragon is a single seater, so that doesn't work. But the old coach, I used to put like 6, 7 people in it. It was a good workhorse, and it had a big block Chevy, and it was very dependable. The new one probably not so much because it's going to be really really accurate, and it's going to be more of a show car type thing. I mean, it's roadworthy, and you can drive it, and you can drive in parades, but putting people in and out of it, not so much. Occasionally, yes, but not on a like I used to put at a convention. I would allow people to ride around in it. We charge them a fee and we would go for little joy rides. I don't think I'm going to do that anymore.
Oh, that's fair enough as well, just because
I mean,
it's
I'd let
replicas.
you in it for special people like yourself. Yes, I give a ride to.
I've actually seen that a mutual friend, acquaintance we have, Sean O'Hill. I've seen him do a video being in the car as well. So I was like, I'm jealous. I need to be in that. So any plans on coming back to Oz anytime soon for a convention or anything?
I'll tell you what. While you're down there, I used to send cars down there to Brisbane. I had a friend. My first trip to Australia was in '05, and I went to Brisbane. Was California Image was the name of his company. I met him when he was up here on a buying tour, and I've been to Brisbane. Let me see, 3 times. Been to Sydney. I was down at the Adelaide last time AC/DC was down there. I was down in Melbourne and Adelaide about 5, 6 years ago, I think. I would like, basically no, not unless there was a business reason, because at my age, I'm trying to go a place that I haven't been. So if I was going to do a big trip somewhere, I would rather go see a continent I haven't been on 3 or 4 times. But I like it. I love Australia. Love the folks. Love the drop bears.
I love that you mentioned drop bears. Oh, what was your reaction the first time you heard about drop bears? Did you actually think they were real until someone goes, "It's a gag"?
It's like jackalopes up here. We have the jackrabbits with with antlers on them. People, you can convince people there's these real jackalopes. The drop bears, it was it's not like I was looking for them, but it was pretty funny. And then the barking spiders, it's like, oh god.
Oh, you're gonna
You guys
get
have
way more spiders. Oh my god. I live
but
kind of on like the cusp of kind of going country a little bit. It's very built up, so it's just oh god, there's probably 5 spiders on my porch right now. Like it gets.
are you in Sydney?
I'm in Melbourne.
Oh, you're in Melbourne. Oh, I was in
Yeah,
Melbourne. Then you're familiar with the film festival there.
the Melbourne International Film Festival. There's yes, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was down there for. And that's where that was the same trip that DC AC/DC played at the big O at the O in Adelaide.
Because you're
The band.
friends with like a with the light one of the lighting people, I
Yeah,
believe.
my friend is the lighting director for ACDC,
Yeah.
designer, and he's been doing it for 30 years for him.
One of my high school teachers kept on telling me that he was Brian's brother. And I was like, well, sir, bring in a photo so we can see. And he never did. And yet we're still like, wait, maybe you look like him. So we still don't know if it's real. I think he just likes saying it just to mess with us.
Yeah, it's funny. Brian, I just met when I was at the concert the other day in Nashville. I met Brian's wife, and Elle, Angus's wife, was there as well, and saw her again. I only met a couple of the guys when I was down there. Brian, the old Cliff Williams, the old bass player, Stevie G, met Angus. Did never met Brian yet, but they're great guys. Great legacy, great band, super professional, put on a great show. You know, at their top notch.
Well, thank you so much, Butch, for coming onto the show. I really, really appreciate this. It was my inner Munster fan just went crazy. I will leave you with one question though.
Here, let me see.
After
I have you. I'm going to take you in the other room here, so I'm going to show you a couple things before we go. Go ahead. I'm listening.
oh, just curious as to, so many years since the show aired, how does it feel to see that it's just resonating with fans and new generations all the time? Oh my God. Woof woof. There's so much. I've got like nothing behind me compared to, oh wow, this is incredible.
And then, we got. Let's see here. We got the Munsters pinball machine. I mean the slot machines, and of course the obligatory Mockingbird Lane.
That's
Anyway,
incredible.
and one more here. We got a friend of mine does the Muppets, so he made me a.
Oh, oh, that's adorable. And I'm loving the Beatles stuff as well. I'm actually, well,
Oh,
yeah, my normal name is named after one of their songs.
okay,
Yeah, my dad's
okay.
a huge Beatle fan.
Yeah. What were you gonna say?
Yeah,
Sorry.
so I was just asking that after so long of since the show aired, how does it feel to see that this is a show that generations will show their kids and whatnot?
Well, people will come up to me and they'll say, do you ever get tired of doing this and this and that? And I told them, I got to tell you, I never really wanted to be an actor. It was just kind of a hobby, something I did, came natural to me that it was going to make money to be a race car driver as I'm watching the Indy 500 as we speak here. So I look up once in a while. There's 2 laps to go. I tell people you're lucky to be involved. You're lucky to be in Hollywood to be remembered for anything. There's so many people never do anything, but to be part of a family unit. Because what happened was this show was so important to so many people that we were in the living room sharing family time with so many millions of people. And people come up and say, "Oh my God, this show reminds me of my favorite uncle who's passed, or my grandmother used to love it." And I want to buy something for my mom who can't be here. So you literally have a connection with people of a positive nature, and all you got to do is just sit and chat and smile and shake their hand and listen to their stories. And you're so lucky to have been an instrumental part of a positive time in their life. So no, I never get tired of it, because how lucky am I?
That's oh my God. This has been amazing. I am going to be really, really forever grateful that you decided to take time out of your day to chat to me about this. I'm very, very grateful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. And if you find out something interesting down there that Munster related, I would take another trip down there. So I'll let you work your magic. Maybe you can find something that people might want to come down there. I've been there before. I know the routine. And the Supernova. I haven't done Supernova for quite a while.
Ah, okay. I might
And
have
I know
to.
the Supernova, what they do there is they bring people down for like a whole month, because they line up like 4 shows in a row.
They do, yeah. Might have to get
So
into some people's ears, I think.
in some people's ears, you can be my age. You can be my Australian, my Aussie agent.
My Aussie agent. Well, thank you everyone for watching the show. I hope you enjoy this just as much as I did. Please like, subscribe, do all those great things, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye, guys.